Yo, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Zither here, and I am back at it again to drop part 2 for What If Deku Was the Red Hood. Part 1 did pretty well, and personally, I enjoyed writing the story for What If Deku Was the Red Hood. This one, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, is most likely going to be an either 4 to 3 part series, just due to the way that I want to end the series. I'm hoping that I executed correctly, because if I do, I feel like it will be one of the best series on my channel, but if I don't, I might ruin the whole thing. But, let's just hope for the best. And with that being said, I don't want to waste your guys' time too much, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, so we pick off our story right where we had left off in the last part. Deku would arrive home and his aunt would yell at him to close that door, as Deku would do so, and he would then go up to his room. As it's basically at this point where Deku would proceed to just go into his room. He'd kind of just sit there, lay down, throw his stuff, and then just think, what's new? As he would lay down and pass out. The very next day, Deku would have a pretty average day. He would just go into his room and he'd go over to his daily job. As I'm just gonna say that in this version of events, Deku works at a fast food place. Yeah, he works at a fast food place, just flipping some burgers in the back, and that's really what Deku does. He doesn't really do much. He's not really that crazy or has that really great of a job. At this point, Deku's kind of just at his job and he's kind of just thinking that what's new. As Deku would get out about like at 3 in the afternoon, Deku at this point would wind up walking home, and it's at this point that Deku would check the mail to see if he got his acceptance letter yet. Deku would wonder if he got inside, just due to the way that everything ended and the fact that he ended up going up against the 0 pointer. He would think, there's no way he got in. He's smart and he's strong, so he should be good. Deku would, open the door and he'd have his mail, as he would say, "I'm home," and his aunt would say, "Okay." And as Deku would kind of just be like, whatever. He would set his stuff down on the table and he would open the projectile, as All Might would appear. And this one he would say, "Ah, I am here." He'd proceed to basically be like, "You ended up coming into my hero, you're accepted into your hero academia." All Might would basically just start doing that, and he would go on to Babylon about, what our original All Might does. This is when Deku would basically get a big, bright smile on his face, as he would say, "I got in." He would look towards his aunt as he would run over to the room and say, "Aunt, I did it. I got into the greatest hero school of Japan." She would say, "That's great, kid. Go tell that to somebody who cares." And she'd start laughing as she'd start hitting the thing that she was on right now. And Deku would look at her as he would kind of sigh and just look down as he'd think, yeah, someone who cares. Deku would then leave, grab his stuff, and just kind of leave his phone on the ground, as Deku would kind of just need some air. He needs some time. It's the same old, and Deku would think that maybe she would have been a little happy for him. He has a shot at getting out of this lifestyle. He would have thought that maybe she would have been happy for him, but I guess not. Deku would leave the house, and this is when he would end up walking over to Dagoma Beach, as he would sit down on the sand and he would just kind of lay there, looking out over to the sunset and the beach, as he would just take it all in. He would then start thinking about his life. He would think about whether it's even worth it to try to become a hero, and Deku would just sit there. This is when, about 1 hour later, somebody would finally come over to him, as this is when Aizawa would actually appear. This is when we would hear Deku hear from the back of his head. He would hear, "I knew I'd find you here, kid. You didn't answer any of my texts or calls." As Deku would turn around to see Aizawa, he would say, "Oh yeah, sorry about that. I left my phone at the house. I didn't really feel the need to bring it with me today." As Aizawa would basically sigh, he'd be like, "Listen, kid, we've never really had the chance to talk, so right now I'd like to just really get to know you better than I have. Let's just talk. Come on. Just tell me what you're thinking. I can't help you unless I know." Deku would look towards Aizawa. He'd sigh and then say, all these years he felt as if it was his fault that his life has turned out the way he did. He thought that it's his fault that his mother left him. It's his fault that his dad's in jail. It's honestly all him. Maybe things would be better if he was never born. Aizawa would hear this, and he would then start hearing as Deku would tell him that he doesn't know how to feel sometimes. Sometimes he just feels as if it's the world against him. This place is cruel, and it's not done anything for him until the point that he finally met Aizawa. But even then, what if he's not even worthy of the opportunity that he's getting? What if everything's just, at the end of the day, worthless? His quirk isn't flashy. What if he doesn't even become a pro hero like All Might or something like that? And Aizawa would then look at Deku as he would say, it's not the time to think about this. Deku would say, then when is the time? When do I finally get to talk about this? I mean, my family doesn't love me, and the only person in my life doesn't support me. She's on something half of the time, and whenever she does talk to me, it feels as if she just wants to hurry the conversation up. I have nothing but you. He would look towards Aizawa as Aizawa would look at Deku and say, I get it, kid. As he would sit down by Deku, he would then say that maybe things always don't have the greatest upbringing, but what matters now is what he does from this point forward. Things are called the past, the present, and the future for a reason. The past is something that you can't change. What's done is done, and you can only try to move forward from it. And the present, well, that's exactly what it is. It's a gift. If he dwells too much on the past, he's never going to finally get to what he should. That's why it's called that. You can't just dwell on the past or what ifs. You just have to do and try to be the best version of yourself at the end of the day. It's a tip that I would give to any of you guys for life. But anyways, Deku would look at Aizawa as he would say, kid, it's not like I had the best upbringing either. I mean, I was always an extrovert, and even now, I still am. A long time ago, when I was around your age, I had a friend. It was about our second year at UA, and his name was Shirakumo. Back then, UA was a high school, but a couple years earlier, we ended up changing to college. He would begin to tell Deku the story of Shirakumo, how he, President Mike, and another friend ended up passing from this world during a mission, which he could have helped, but he wasn't strong enough. And from that day forward, he decided that he was going to never let that ever happen again. Nobody would ever perish before him because of his inability to be powerful, because his quirk wasn't flashy. He promised himself that he'd be better. He would grow from that experience. Deku would hear this, and he would then think that Aizawa was honestly the only family that it truly has. Even though they're not related by blood, Deku, he looks at Aizawa, and he just goes in for a hug as Deku tears up, and he says, I needed that. He would then wipe them away, and Aizawa would tell him not to worry about things. I mean, sometimes people need to cry. As Deku would look at Aizawa, he would then say, thanks. And this is when Deku would end up standing up, as Aizawa would say, so, you ready to go over to my house? As Deku would say, yeah, I am. It's at this point that Deku would end up going to Aizawa's house, and the very next day, Deku would wake up as he would notice that Aizawa was no longer even there. He would say that's classic. He'd say he's probably at UA already, and Deku would end up showering and getting ready for his first day at UA. As this is when Deku would start getting all of his stuff in order. He would end up throwing on his clothes and just walking over to UA. This is when Deku would walk past the street, and this time he wouldn't see people, shady people. He'd see a bunch of rich people. He would notice that all of them seemed pretty snob-nosed, and Deku would just be like, must be nice to be living in this lifestyle. I'd give anything for that. Deku would just walk through it, and he would finally arrive at UA as he would open the door, and this is when he would immediately just be greeted to Bakugo and Ida arguing. Bakugo would be like, Four Eyes, I'm gonna enjoy tearing you a new one. As Ida would say, how dare you speak to a classmate like this? This is when Deku would see Ida. Ida would look at Deku as he would give him a little bit of an angry expression. Deku would kind of just sit over there by the back. And this is when at this point, Uraraka would walk inside of the classroom as she would end up seeing Deku. And at this point, Deku would basically have enough. It would have been about 5 minutes of constantly hearing Bakugo and Ida go at it back and forth. And Deku would stand up from his desk. He would walk up to Bakugo, grab him by his head, and slam his head into the desk. He'd say, kid, if you don't shut up right now, I'm going to make you. As Bakugo would hit his head onto the desk, he would hold his nose. He would have ended up twisting it a little bit. And he'd say, ugh. How dare you? As he would look up at Deku, and Deku would be staring at him with some pretty angry eyes. Bakugo would say that it's about time. He puts him into his... As immediately Aizawa would wrap him up with his scarf and say, there will be no fighting in my classroom. He would then look towards Deku's direction and say, that goes for you as well. Another one of those slip-ups and I'll kick you out. As Deku would look towards Aizawa, see the serious expression on his face as he would say, he's sorry. Aizawa would then be thinking that he wanted to do the same thing as well, but he's a teacher. As he'd let Deku off with a warning, but at Bakugo, better not have another one of those outbursts again. Uraraka would have actually been walking over to Deku's direction, but when she saw what Deku did, she ended up walking away, being like, yeah, no, that's not for me. At this point, Aizawa would look towards the classroom as he would tell them all to just throw these outfits on, as they would all look at them, and Uraraka would then say, but what about orientation? As Aizawa would look at her and chuckle as he would say, think we got time for orientation? Stuff like that is just formalities. We don't really need to go to that stuff. If you really want to become a hero, you need to be willing to put in the time, and we have 3 years to make you guys the best heroes you can be. Is that understood? Uraraka would say, yeah, and this is when they would be right. Perfect. Then put these on and meet me outside. Everybody would end up walking over to their areas, and this is when Aizawa would end up actually walking into the guy's locker room, just trying to make sure that no fight breaks out, meaning that Mineta doesn't even end up peeking at the girls' locker room, and this whole little situation honestly goes by just normal. Everybody puts on their suits and meets Aizawa outside. At this point, Aizawa would end up actually throwing the ball at Deku, as Deku would catch the ball, and Aizawa would tell him to throw it as far as he physically can. Deku would say that with his quirk, Aizawa would say, of course, he'd say that this is a test of your quirks. The normal system is flawed. People need to stop pretending as if quirks don't exist, and some people are better than others. Now throw that ball as hard as you can. Deku would smirk as he would then say, perfect. As he would then immediately reel his arm back and throw it as far as he physically could, getting about 900 meters. It's at this point that Aizawa would smile under his scarf, and everybody else would begin to do the other stuff. He would begin to show everybody what they're about to do, and this is when we would start getting into the quirk assessment. First off, the 50-meter dash. Immediately, Deku would go into the line as he would activate his enhancement quirk. His eyes would flash a brief red as immediately he would complete the 50-meter dash before even Ida's time. He would have chopped Ida's time in half completely. The grip strength test, Deku would have completely broken the thing, and the standing long jump, dude, Deku cleared the entire thing. The side-to-side steps, Deku did pretty well, nowhere near Mineta. The ball throw, as I said, Deku would have ended up getting 1,000 in terms of that, and they would have ended up doing push-ups, sit-ups, and other stuff like that. And Deku would have ended up doing great in that. He's superhuman. I mean, he's pretty powerful after doing all that training with Aizawa. And he's about the same level as, Robin when he was a younger kid. So he's pretty powerful. In terms of physical brawl and just brawling capability, he's not all that. But, he definitely has some good qualities here and there. That being said, the test ends up wrapping up, and this is when everybody would end up actually wrapping around Deku. Or no, swarming Deku, as they would ask him what his quirk is. Deku would look at a bunch of people who actually look at him, and they genuinely want to know what his quirk is. Deku would say that his quirk is basically an enhancement type, and it lets him enhance all of his attributes. As they would all say that he's that strong from just a simple enhancement quirk. How long has he been working on it? What are the drawbacks? Deku would say that it really doesn't come with any as far as he's concerned, and they would all just be completely just thrown a bit back by that. Bakugo would listen into this, and he would basically think that, enhancement type, no wonder his grip is so strong when he did that. Looks like I'll definitely be needing to put this punk in his place later. As it's at this point that Deku would basically get all his stuff, change back into his normal clothes, and he would basically wave off Aizawa, telling him that he's basically going to go over to his house and pack his stuff to move in with him. At this point, Deku would basically start walking away, and this is when he would grab his backpack and everything, as he'd basically start walking home. However, this is when Bakugo would approach behind him and say, hey. Deku would turn around and see who it is, as he would say, what do you want? Bakugo would look at him and he'd say, don't play dumb with me. You know exactly what I want. You made me look like a fool back there. Now, I'm gonna make you look like a fool. As Deku would look towards Bakugo, he would then say, you can try it. Bakugo would shoot an explosion at Deku, to which Deku would dodge by sliding under him. He would grab his leg and hit the back, causing Bakugo to fall down slightly. And this is when Deku would then spin, as he would drop kick Bakugo. Bakugo would land on the ground, and Deku would punch Bakugo square in the jaw before Bakugo has any time to react. Bakugo would then feel that hit, as he would then say, as he would then say, bah! You guys know the word that's about to come out of his mouth. As he would then rush at Deku, shooting an explosion to propel himself up into the air. He would then say, AP shot! As he would blast at Deku, Deku would dodge the blow, but one of them would end up actually catching him by the leg, and Deku would fall to the ground slightly, as another one would pierce his shoulder. Deku would then get angry at that as his eyes would start glowing of darker shade of red. Deku would then look at Bakugo as he would say that he's over. This match, done for. He would then look towards Bakugo as he would then say, "You're done for." As out of his pocket, he would then throw a weird little thing that looks like he would throw a battering. Yeah, he would throw a battering. Why not? Let's give him a battering. Batman doesn't exist. He would throw a battering at him, and Bakugo would then get sent out of the sky because that thing scratched his face pretty bad. At this point, Bakugo would fall down. Deku would rush at Bakugo. Bakugo would do the same, but with an explosion powering him. And they would both come in as they would punch each other square in the jaw. But Deku would be sent back quite a bit, but Bakugo, he would have been sent flying into an alleyway. And Deku afterwards would end up walking over to Bakugo as he would start kicking him, and he would not stop stomping him. Deku would then look at Bakugo as he would spit on him, and he would then start walking away. As he would then say, "That'll teach you about messing with me the next time." Bakugo would then start basically be laying there covered in blood as Deku would then say that it's time for him to go home. He would go over to his aunt's house, which he would open the door and she'd say, "About time you got home. What were you doing yesterday? Partying or something?" She'd start laughing as Deku would say, "No, nothing like that. But I'm gonna be leaving now." And she'd say, "What? What do you mean?" Deku would look at her as he would say that he's moving out. He's done being with her. She would say that kid is the only thing keeping them both afloat. That rent money he owes her definitely better be on the table now. As Deku would throw a bunch of cash on her table, he would then say that that's it. He would say he's going to be out of her life, so they can just go their separate ways now. As she would say, she would start chuckling and say, "So, what? You think just because you got into that little hero school it makes you better? Like you're somehow going to be better than what you are? There's no way you're going to grow to be anything. If anything, you're just going to be some lowly sidekick. You're nothing. Nothing, you hear me?" Deku would walk out the door as he would grab all of his stuff, and this is where we're going to be ending part 2 for What If Deku Was the Red Hood. I know it's a little bit of a shorter episode, however, my food is ready. I said episode, but however, my food is ready, and I do actually want to go enjoy my food without having it be cold. So this is basically where I'm going to be ending part 2 for What If Deku Was the Red Hood. There's going to be about 2 more parts of the series, so I hope you guys are hyped for that. Maybe 2 more or 1 more. I'm not really too sure about that. But with that being said, though, guys, I hope you guys did enjoy this part, however short it was, as well as make sure to go check out part 2 for What If Deku Was Spider-Man. And with that being said, it has been your boy Zether. You guys know the drill. I love each and every single one of you guys, and I am out. Peace.